Hey guys, we're here today with an OU tier maker video, so hopefully you guys enjoy. If you do, leave a like below and subscribe for more content like this. With that said, let's get into it. I do want to preface really quickly before we get into this though. I know mental Wi-Fi was supposed to happen today. It's ended up getting pushed off to tomorrow. I spent 3.5 hours recording mental Wi-Fi battles, and I'm so done with BDS Wi-Fi after that. There was not a single game that was remotely uploadable. Because either A, Ments never needed to touch the field because I'm on solo to team. B, which happened twice, I had to multiple games where I got multiple Pokemon frozen. There was one game where Clef Scizor ended up doing the entire 20-minute timers and stuff like that. It was just dumb. It was dumb. Not touching Wi-Fi. We'll do a live with it tomorrow instead. But anyway, so because of that, it's currently like 8:19 on day of uploading. I was meant to upload this, record this yesterday, but stuff happened with bulk recording other content, and also I got my booster, so I'm a bit under the weather. So with that said, I'm doing this instead, which was supposed to be Wednesday's vid, so I'm just swapping the order. But I went ahead and already did the Ubers for Pokemon. Now, I'm going to be tiering Shaymin and Celebi both in this list, despite being unreleased, so I do want to mention that quickly. They will be tiered nonetheless, just because they will eventually be added to the game in some way, shape, or form. Especially when Home Transfer comes out, I'm shocked if they're not. So I'm going to tier them, just as if they were allowed. However, everything in here is like blatantly Uber. With the exception of maybe Deoxys Speed. Now, to be fair, this actually was a duplicate. There were a couple duplicates actually on this list. Shoutouts to the tier maker I found though, and I will link it down below just in case if anyone else wants to do it. Some stuff is also out of order. But basically how we're going to do this is anything that's in the trash tier, like blatantly trash, I'm not going to go over it. I will just mention that it's there, and that will be that. Just to speed things up, because we have literally every fully evolved Pokemon on this list, and maybe some other unevolved Pokemon. I'm not sure, actually, I haven't skimmed this much. I just know there's a couple duplicates, and stuff's out of order. So with that said, let's start off with a few trash Pokemon. We have stuff like Electrode, we have Executor, Marowak, Hitmonchan. All of these are pretty garbage Pokemon. Hitmonlee, I feel like could actually be kind of niche. OU doesn't have a lot of fighting types outside of Braylon and Infernape, and Unburden or Reckless both could be kind of cool. I feel like this is really kind of reaching though, but it could be a cool Reckless Scarfer. I actually kind of want to try it someday, so Bird, if you're listening, Hitmonlee OU team 1. Weezing, another trash Pokemon. Chansey, completely unviable without a Violate. Kang, trash. Seaking, trash. Like, we have a lot of these really trashers. However, we do have our first decent Pokemon actually being Starmie. Now, Starmie actually is one of the fastest Pokemon in OU right now, and with the combination of Bolt Beam plus Rapid Spin, it's actually able to tear through a lot of teams. The 115 speed is truthfully very helpful, especially when you're also boosting that with Rapid Spin to outpace Scarfers. Great hazard removal option. I truthfully recommend this on any team that's looking for a spinner. If you want a spinner, go with Starmie. Very easy option. Mr. Mime, I'm going to give this a niche actually, purely because of the Magic Room set. I think it actually does kind of have some purpose with Pokemon like Gengar and Garchomp having such phenomenal usage, and both also being pretty good setup options. Now, to be fair, this literally is only useful for Magic Room. However, I can think of one more niche this has over every other Pokemon in trash, despite it being extremely niche. So I'm going to give it that. I think it actually did its job kind of well when we used it, if nothing else. And we could have definitely played into it more if I really wanted to. And I do want to feature this again, because I think this is a fun mon. I want to show this in a Showdown Live specifically at some point. But with that said though, Scyther, obviously trash. There's no reason to use this in a Scizor tier. Jinx, I'll give the Jinx niche purely because of Dry Skin and the fact, like just Dry Skin alone with a tier where Manaphy could potentially be running Mono Water. I gotta give it that, if nothing else. This is actually one of the Pokemon we fought, and I kind of wish I showed it off in one of the Wi-Fi battles, but the rest of the battle was so trash. So, we have Pinsir, trash. Tauros, I guess I'll give this trash as well. Butterfree, we have Gyarados though next. Gyarados is another, I'll give Gyarados a usable. I don't think it's in the same tier as Starmie, certainly not. However, I think that Gyarados, despite being a UU Pokemon, is actually a pretty good Dragon Dance option. And while I think that Gator is objectively a better one, I think that Gyarados has a couple things over it, such as Intimidate, which is pretty useful. And also just the slight edge in speed, that base 81 speed able to outpace a lot of Pokemon such as Gator, Heatran. Well, to be fair, Heatran would be tying with Gator, but still, Pokemon like Heatran. Also Dragonite as well. With the +1, you're able to always, as long as you're boosted the same as Dragonite, you should always be able to outpace it. So stuff like that, I think, does give Gyarados some usability this year. Better than other Pokemon of similar usage, to be fair. Let's see, we have Lapras as trash. Ditto will always be a niche Pokemon. I feel like Ditto will never be something that's like usable or great unless it's a heavy setup spam tier, but it's definitely not a bad option. Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon. I really want to try Evolution someday, but they are objectively trash. Omastar, trash. Kabutops, trash. Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl I can give usable as well. Just the speed is so useful in the OU meta right now. Just hitting a 130 mark is incredible for it, in my opinion. And also, it's a pretty good lead, too, to be fair. I know Burgo actually passed me a Tailwind team back a couple actually a couple months ago at this point, with Tailwind Arrow, which was pretty nice to be honest. But even still, this Pokemon is just a really good lead, outpacing everything else and being able to just go for a taunt, stopping rock setters. It's pretty good. Not the best Pokemon, but it's not the worst either. Snorlax, I'll give it niche purely just because it's a fast spin of normal that also can't get toxic, so you don't ever need to burn the turn going for a heal bell, unlike something like Blissey that actually needs to take that turn. Also, just having better Fizz Def than Blissey, that has some sort of niche there, albeit I still don't think it's a great Pokemon in this meta, but I think it's at least better than stuff like the Jinx and the Mime, if nothing else. Articuno. Now, I will say Articuno, this is going to be something that takes a bit of explaining, but I have to actually put Articuno in Ubers, and this is something I didn't actually notice until I was watching my good friend Josh, a Ultra player, who is streaming RU, who wanted to do a triple bird team in RU, and I was thinking, you know, that's a pretty cool idea. I think that's a tier that could unironically maybe make it work, because there's not a lot of good flying traditions in RU. However, sadly, RU actually banned this Pokemon, same as UU, because of the fact that you can't actually run Snowcloak, and Pressure Articuno is actually currently unavailable in BBSP. If it wasn't for that, this Pokemon would definitely be in the trash tier, but because of that, it is technically an Uber Pokemon, which is really funny to me, because this Pokemon is a Pokemon that would be like NUPU if nothing else. So it's just super funny to me that this Pokemon is actually considered an Uber purely off of that alone. But I have to put it there technically. Zapdos, I can give it niche. I shit on this Pokemon a lot, but I mean, the typing with Static is pretty useful and everything else. It's a really good fighting check. However, it's still just a bad Pokemon without having anything besides Mono Electric and U-Turn. You kind of have to run Drill Peck if you want to check fighting types, so it kind of sucks because you have to run like a mixed Zapdos. Which, to be fair, you can run minus speed. It's not the end of the world, but I still do think it's a niche at best Pokemon. Moltres, I don't really like Moltres this meta, but I will say though, the typing plus Flame Body is kind of useful as like a Scizor check and everything else if it's not running Rock Tomb, which a lot of Scizors aren't running Rock Tomb, to be fair. So I'll give it niche if nothing else. It does check one of the best Pokemon in the tier. That's something at least. Also, it's just a really good defogger on like stall builds, I guess. Well, like I'm not gonna say a really good defogger to be fair, but it's an option on stall builds. Anyway, we're getting to Dragonite next, which Dragonite's also another decent Pokemon. Dragonite's just one of the better, it's objectively a better Dragon Dancer than Gyarados, if nothing else. Multi-Scale is a really cool ability, and if you pair it with removal, it's a really usable option. Mew is up next. Now, Mew I'm going to also give decent, which I don't know how people actually feel on Mew, but I personally think it has a lot of options in this format, to be fair. Between the fact that it has stuff like Nasty Plot, it has defensive options, it's a really good sweeper, really good cleaner. Sadly, obviously, no Dragon Dance kind of sucks. I'm pretty sure it doesn't have Dragon Dance at least, but even if it does, I mean, it's kind of hard to really function with it, to be fair. I feel like there's just better Dragon Dancers right now. Regardless, though, Mew's biggest issue will always just be finding, like, the perfect set for it for every matchup, because it will never really have that sort of set, but it comes pretty close, I will say. I just don't think it's in the realm of Pokemon like Garchomp, Lottie, etc., to where it's truly, like, just reigning over teams. We have a few trash Pokemon coming up, such as Meganium, Beedrill, Furret, like, literally all of these, like, next three are all in this trash tier, obviously. I do want to give a bit of a spotlight to Typhlosion, at least if nothing else. I think it specs Typhlosion actually on Sun. Despite Sun not being the best, I think it has at least some sort of use, just because Typhlosion is just a really hard hitter. And really, the only waters in the tier are stuff like Manaphy and Rotom. So you can definitely overwhelm those with Venu. I think if nothing else, I mean, it's definitely like a C- sort of Pokemon, if nothing else, I feel like. But not the best. It definitely has like some, like, I can think of a use for it, if nothing else. Just really as a specs Sunbreaker with Eruption. That's really it. Actually, no, I take it back. It's really not going to function that well in this tier. There's too many dragons. I'm going to put it in the trash. If it was Yu-Gi, though, this would be a niche Pokemon. Gator, though, Gator definitely is in the decent tier. I think Gator is actually such a cool Dragon Dancer this gen, and without stuff like Toxapex to check it, this Pokemon is an absolute menace, and I think it's definitely something that is shockingly underutilized. I want to do another Gator vid. I haven't done one actually since like one of my first Wi-Fi battles, but I want to get a showdown live with this as well. Gator was such a fun Pokemon to use, and I quite literally, I don't think I've used it since, besides on the team that I've reused with it, but showing Infernape over Blaziken, because Blaziken was banned. But other than that vid, I don't think I've used Gator since. So I definitely want to touch on this again. Crobat, I think Crobat's usable. The speed alone, as well as the fact it's a fairy check, like it's usable in that regard because it's great at checking stuff like the Fable, which is just a really good Pokemon. Also, it has options like Nasty Plot, for example, which are pretty useful. Defogging the pivot, it's really cool. So I gotta give Crobat usable if nothing else, just for the speed alone. Lantern's sadly trash in this format. Xatu, trash. Ampharos, trash. Philosopher, trash. We're getting through a lot of trashers. I'm gonna cut through these as well, just because they're all here, and like this realm has a lot of trash Pokemon. So we're gonna clear through them all really quickly. Ozzy though, Ozu's a decent Pokemon. I think Banded Ozu and Drum Ozu both really good sets on it, to be fair. Just a really good breaker, really good typing as well in the tier where there's not a lot of good fairies. So Ozu being a really good physical offensive option in both the water and fairy realm is really cool in my opinion. Next up, we have Polytode. Polytode, really never reason to use Polytode over Pelipper. Quagsire always will at least be niche just because of auto-wear and the fact it's a really good physical wall. It's better physical wall than Clef just because of the stat spread alone. It's really good for stalls, I guess. It's really good electric tech. I've had a couple builds actually where Quagsire's been kind of annoying for, but really far be between, to be fair. I think Clef will objectively always be the better unaware user, but Quag has purpose, I guess, in some realms. Not a lot, but there are some. Espeon, trash, no reason to use it. Umbreon, trash, no reason to use it. Slowking, I gotta say, I think Slowking actually could be niche. It's a really good special sponge, if nothing else. Sadly, no AV. If it was AV, like, usable, I think it could actually maybe fall in the usable tier. But it's better at checking stuff than, let's say, like a Slowbro, for example. So there's use there, if nothing else. The regen is obviously really nice, but sadly, the loss of stuff like Teleport definitely hurts it a bit. So I'll give it niche, I guess. Wobbuffet, trash. Even Wish Shadow Tag spawns are awful, in my opinion, in the current meta. Giraffe Rig, trash. Dunsparce, trash. Raticate, trash. Oh my god, we have so many trash Pokemon this tier. Okay, yeah, so we filtered through a bunch of these really trash Pokemon now. And now we're gonna get into stuff like Fortress. Fortress, I think, objectively has to be a niche Pokemon. Just because of the spin and the fact it also gets hazards. It's just great at roll compression, if nothing else. It's stuff like Donphan is really the only competitor. And, I mean, the dual spikes is kind of cool on it, though losing rocks really sucks. I don't know why they cut rocks in this Pokemon. It's a TM. I don't know why they cut it. It was really dumb. Steelix, I gotta put in the trash tier. There's no use to use this Pokemon. Grand Ball, I'll give niche purely just because the fairy type with Intimidate, which is kind of cool for stuff like Garchomp. Albeit, I don't know if anyone's even using Grand Ball, but I feel like it could be something that's a bit underexplored personally. Just really good for stuff like, as the Garchomp, really the big one. Yeah, just Intimidate's kind of cool. Quillfish, Dual Spiker, Fairy Check. I mean, it's something at least. I gotta give it niche if I put Fortress there, in my opinion. Scizor, finally, we have our first great Pokemon. This is definitely a tier definer right here. Scizor is truthfully one of the best Pokemon, and I don't think it will ever change, just because it's a really good pivot. It enables so many other threats. It's a great Dragon Check, especially to stuff like Lottie, and it's a check to Lottie that's not going to kill Momentum either. So, in my opinion, Scizor is definitely like a tier definer. Definitely great, for sure. Shuckle, niche just because of webs and rocks. No real discussing there. Heracross, I feel like Heracross is actually kind of usable. If you throw this on a webs team, this actually is going to break a lot of OU teams just because of Facade alone with Guts. Also the fact that it's going to break steals, which are really important because steals and rocks are like the two checks to normal. So normal plus fighting alone will just rip a lot of teams. And then obviously for Ghost, you have stuff like Teatar that you can pair with it, or even just any sort of other dark type or just Ghost Killer. So yeah, I think a Heracross, if nothing else, just earns a spot, at least in the usable realm, just because there's also not a lot of fighting competition. It's really just, as I said, OU and Brit on an OU tier is really just Braylon and Infernape. So next up though, we have Ursaring. I gotta give Ursaring niche. I'll be honest, this is actually a pretty cool breaker in my opinion. I definitely think I slept on it a bit, but I think it's at least somewhat usable, and it's definitely better than a lot of the trash options. With Guts, you're able to really ransack teams with stuff like Earthquake, Crunch, and Facade. It's really all you need. So you could throw this on like a Trick Room build, I guess, if nothing else, and it's something. It's really something, if nothing else. But I think it has the use purely for Trick Room, if nothing else. Obviously, there are other teams that can function on, but I think it deserves a slot, if nothing else, for Trick Room. But yeah, we have Pilot Swine up next, objectively bad, especially out of Violate. Skarmory gets a decent slot. Now, I don't think that there's ever a reason to put this above decent, in my opinion, despite having good roll compression with Spikes and Defog and Whirlwind and Roost. It has a lot of options going for it, to be fair, in terms of defensive builds. But I feel like Skarmory does definitely lose a lot of momentum this gen. Obviously, without the fact, like just stuff like Rotom Wash in the tier and Infernape just definitely put a lot of pressure on this. The fact that it's a steal, it doesn't have a lot of Spinef. So stuff like Lottie will still be able to definitely put a lot of pressure with Specs. And it's still also very passive against those Pokemon too. So I think it's kind of a kick to the ass for it, but like, I still think it's a decent Pokemon, if nothing else. It has use in stalls, if nothing else. It's a really good phaser, really good removal option. Hotname's trash, Fearo's trash. Kingdra, I'll give niche just for manual rain alone. It's kind of a menace. Also, I guess Critdra is always something, if nothing else, but now Donphan actually gonna give usable, and I personally was actually very low on this Pokemon until Bird passed me the team that I used Donphan for. I forget what the team was, but I know it was showcasing something else, and I just had Donphan on it. But it was kind of a cool bond, actually. I think the physical defensiveness of Donphan helps it a lot better against stuff like Infernape, for example, because, well, not better. Gliscor, to be fair, is still the better option there. But it's cool for something like Infernape. Obviously, it's a good spinner. It's good at roll compression, too, I guess, in that regard. So I like Donphan a lot. I think it's actually kind of an underestimated Pokemon. And with stuff like Ice Shard, too, for all the Dragons, it's definitely not going to end up costing itself with the speed, necessarily. So, yeah, I do actually like this. Let's see. Porygon 2. Porygon 2, I still, even without a Violet, I actually do got to give this thing a niche just because it's Trick Room Setter. Still could definitely pose a bit of a threat in that regard. And it's still kind of bulky on both ends. Not like Chansey where it only has special bulk and is objectively outclassed by Blissey. I think it's at least if nothing else is in the same tier as Snorlax in my opinion. Stantler trash. Smeargle gets niche automatically just because of the hazard compression. I mean, it's Smeargle. What are you expecting? It's always going to be something. Hitmontop, trash. Miltank, trash. Blissey, I gotta give in the decent realm. Scar and Bliss, obviously, will always be a decent combination, in my opinion. Albeit, it's not as terrifying right now. But I'm actually kind of shocked I don't see more Scar and Bliss, to be fair. Though I will say it's probably just attributed to the fact that I play it a lot more Wi-Fi than Showdown. So people are probably just not using it for that reason on Wi-Fi. But I will say, though, Scar and Bliss is still, obviously, on paper, a really decent defensive option. I think it's just a bit too passive for the tier right now, but Blissey on its own is still a really good special sponge. Skarmory on its own is still a really good physical sponge. Still really good options in general for defensiveness. Raikou, I'm going to give in the usable tier. I think Raikou definitely is a really cool spec spawn. I've used it a couple times on teams with specs, but I don't think it's in the realm of stuff like Starmie, Mew, Gator. I think it's just kind of there with more stuff like Crobat, Aerodactyl, Donphan, etc. It's a cool electric, but I think Rotom is just an objectively better one, and I wouldn't put Rotom Wash in the great tier. So maybe if I bump up Rotom, I'll put it up in decent, but otherwise, Entei, I'm gonna give Entei niche just because of the fact that it has better priority than Infernape, and it's a cool fire type still with base 100. It's a really good breaker with Sacred Fire, and the burn chance is really incredible. But I really think this would only really function in a Webs team, and throwing a ban on it, those are really your only options in my opinion. But still is something at least, if nothing else. Suicune, I gotta give usable. Really cool defensive water, however, I think that Rotom Wash is the objectively better option here, to be fair. Despite the fact that Suicune is still a good option, I think that the offensive waters are honestly putting a bit more work right now, I know you from my experience. But Suicune still does have some nice usage, but if it had pressure, I think it would go to decent. Just without pressure, it's a bit harder to really utilize Suicune to its full potential. Next up, we're gonna go into Teatar. Teatar is definitely a great Pokemon, in my opinion. It's a phenomenal Lottie Sponge. Also, just the fact that it's got a lot of good mix options, able to definitely lure in a lot of different Pokemon on potential switches, stuff like Garchomp if you click Ice Beam on the double, able to nail that. It's a great Hazard Setter. It's a great Psychic Sponge, especially to stuff like Zam as well, so where Zam will be forced to click that Focus Blast, and it can potentially just miss the Focus Blast, you crunch it and KO it. So I think nothing else, Teatar is still a great Pokemon personally. It's just so useful. I will never not love Teatar. Celebi. Now, if Celebi was in the tier, I think Celebi would actually be in the usable option. Celebi just being a nice grass type, OU really doesn't have a lot of them, and I think it definitely hurts a bit in the tier. However, I think a Shaymin will just be objectively better. Celebi having a bit of a weakness to Scizor, like a really bad weakness to Scizor. Whereas if nothing else, at least Celebi, and Shaymin only has the 2x weakness. Also the fact that Shaymin has stuff like Seed Flare, which is pretty cool for the Spinaf dropping 50%, 40% of the time. So I don't think I could ever rank Shaymin and Celebi in the same tier. I think objectively speaking, Celebi is just the worst option here. But it does have some merit as a good fighting sponge or nothing else. But even still, it'd really only be helpful against like Braylon because Infernape's gonna maul us either way. Arbok, trash. Sceptile, I'm gonna get Sceptile niche purely just because I think that Spec Sceptile with the speed alone, honestly, just really good. I think this is a Pokemon I truthfully slept on going into the vid, but I genuinely believe this is actually a pretty decent Pokemon. I think that Sceptile with specs truthfully could maul a lot of common cores. Stuff like, of course, it puts a lot of pressure on teams with stuff like Gliscor because it's going to take a lot from Leaf Storm. Stuff like, of course, Mammoth Swine is going to be threatened if it's locked into, if it's like a banded Mammoth Swine, it's going to be threatened by this. Stuff like Garchomp is still going to take a lot of damage from Specs Dragon Pulse. So I think it, honestly, this Pokemon does give a lot. I think that the Focus Blast, Dragon Pulse, and Leaf Storm Giga Drain moveset is pretty good against a lot of teams. So I got to give Sceptile niche if nothing else. I think it's pretty good. Swampert, I'm going to give Swampert usable. I know Swampert's like a UU Pokemon right now, but the water ground typing is pretty invaluable, and there's not a lot of good grasses in the tier. That's why I think that Sceptile actually has any merit being ranked in niche alone. With stuff like Tangrowth really being the only viable grass, Swampert's 4 times is pretty good. And it's a good hazard setter too. So I'll give it that. Mightyena, Lanoon, Beautifly, like all these Pokemon are pretty trash. I gotta give Raichu trash as well. Ludicolo, I like using it, but it's not a good Pokemon. I wish it was better, but it's not. It's sadly not. Pelipper, without Drizzle, is obviously trash. Yeah, I put Polytode in trash. Good. Okay. Gardevoir. So I actually think Gardevoir's a usable Pokemon. In a meta where Psychic types are so good, and stuff like Zam is really overshining as a Psychic type, and same as Lottie, I think that Gardevoir gets a bit of flack, but it's pretty good with the natural bulk it has. Obviously, Combine variants are pretty deadly. Wish variants are pretty good as well. It's a good Trick Room setter, as we saw with the Rhyperior Crawdont team. I think it's actually a pretty slept-on Pokemon, and I kind of want to make a discussion on why I think Gardevoir is underutilized, because I think it's a really, really slept-on Pokemon in this tier, in my opinion, with the Fairy Psychic typing. It's a great 4x fighting resist, and you can invest this thing defensively, and I truthfully think that defensive is the better option on Gardevoir in most cases, but it still has good use as a Scarfer. Base 80 Scarf is nothing to sleaze at. I think it's a really good Pokemon, in my opinion, but I don't think it's in the decent tier. Decent is, like, for tier, like, very, very good Pokemon in OU. I don't think it's in that realm. We have a bunch of Pokemon here that are just in the trash tier that I'm not even going to begin to cover. I guess Braylon is the next Pokemon, though. Braylon definitely gets a spot in great. Braylon is definitely an OU definer right now. The grass fighting type is so incredible as a ground check. Also, Spore is so annoying for a lot of teams, and I feel like Braylon is a Pokemon that I dedicate a check to on a lot of teams, in my opinion. So, I gotta give Braylon that. Braylon is incredible, and I would love to see this Pokemon just as... I love using Braylon. It's so fun, and I want to get another team with it, to be honest. It's so fun. Shaymin has to be niche purely just because of Wonder Guard. I mean, it's always going to be possible to do something with this Pokemon, in my opinion, if you just play your cards right. It's just kind of getting there. Exploud, sadly, Exploud is trash. I wish it was better. Hariyama, sadly, trash, which is better. I have a bunch of Pokemon that are just kind of suck right here. Even in a tier without fighting types, Medicham still finds a way to suck. We have so many trash Pokemon. Shout out to Hoenn for just giving us so many trash Pokemon. I might even see to cut. Oh, actually, we have a couple good ones. Okay, so first up, we have Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen, I gotta have niche. The typing alone with dual rocks plus T-Spikes is pretty cool. It's a good Fairy check, good ground type as well for stuff like, for example, Raikou. Forces it to click Scald and actually take notice of it. So I like it a lot. Nidoqueen, obviously, having a good speed set too at 76. For a bulky Pokemon, that's actually pretty good. And Sheer Force just helps it break really well. Albeit, I do think Nidoking is objectively better, which is why I'm going to put Nidoking in usable when we get to it. But Nidoqueen, if nothing else, is still a cool option. We have Twerkle. Twerkle, I gotta give a niche. Just the sun aspect alone is really cool. As I said, stuff like Typhlosion and Venu could be like kind of usable options, albeit Typhlosion's definitely still really hard to pull off, but it's something. The trash Pokemon, I think it's one of the better ones. We have Grumpig, which is trash. Flygon, I will never not put this Pokemon in trash until Garchomp is banned. When Garchomp gets banned, we can discuss putting this in niche, if not usable. But until Garchomp gets banned, this is always going to be a trash Pokemon. There's just no reason to use it. Cacturne sucks. Altaria sucks. Zangoose, I thought it was a really cool Pokemon, actually. Same as Ursaring, I think it's a cool Pokemon, albeit this is the edge of being faster. Base 9 is actually incredible with Toxic Boost. I think the one downside over Ursaring is just the fact you're taking more damage to Toxic Orb, but the fact that it's faster means that you're a lot better off, in my opinion. Especially with stuff like Quick Attack and Close Combat, Quick Attack, and Facade is just really useful. Same as Earthquake as well. I believe this gets Earthquake, but regardless, it just needs a Steel coverage option. Zangoose pretty much just same merit as Ursaring, just different play, because obviously Ursaring just takes less from burn from the Flame Orb, and also Zangoose just takes more, but it's faster, so it's a trade-off. But I think Zangoose is really cool in webs, if nothing else. We have a couple of really trash Pokemon, though, before we get into some better ones. We actually have a slew of better ones, starting with Crawdont. Now, Crawdont, I actually think Crawdont is a usable Pokemon. The Dark typing alone, plus the fact that it's just a really good physical breaker, I actually think Crawdont's a pretty incredible Pokemon. I think the one downside it has is the fact that it's not Gator, and Gator just having a speed edge, as well as the fact that you can Dragon it's easier, because +1 Gator with speed is actually able to outpace a lot of Pokemon like Zam, for example, and Aerodactyl. Sadly, Crawdont can't really do that. It's pretty slow, even at the +1 speed, so it's really reliant on Sword Hand sets, which, to be fair, with Aqua Jet, Knockoff, and Waterfall or Crab Hammer, it's still pretty good, but it's objectively worse than Gator, in my opinion. We have Nidoking up next. Nidoking, as I already said, it's just better Nidoqueen. There's not really a reason to go much into this. It does the same things Nidoqueen does, but it's faster and just hits harder, which I think is more valuable in the tier right now. We have Milotic. Milotic, I think, is a niche just purely the fact that Suicune doesn't have pressure. I think you could actually make a case for Flamethrower Milotic being a niche Pokemon. I don't think it's that great, though, but you could maybe make a case for it, I guess, over Suicune. Purely just because it lacks pressure. If pressure Suicune was the thing, though, I think our Pokemon would be trash. Gastron sucks. Kecleon, I love it, but it sucks. Banette sucks. Dusclops sucks. We have a lot of trash Pokemon. Again, shout out to Hoenn. Hoenn was a tier of trash Pokemon. So many bad Pokemon. Like, I would objectively rank Clamper better just because I can use the toots. Okay, Clefable. Here we go. Finally, something good. As I said, some of these were out of order, but Clefable is a definitive great Pokemon. I shit on Clefable a ton, and I know a ton of people will, like, in the BBL server, of course, will know that I shit on this Pokemon a ton, but it's mostly just an Ubers. I don't think this is a good Ubers Pokemon. But I think I will say, just because of the lack of fair competition, I think this Pokemon actually hasn't placed even in Ubers, but it's a tier definer. Again, similar to Scizor and similar to Braylon, these Pokemon, like, absolutely define OU right now. And the fact that this can still actually catch Scizors just on Switch by going for raw flamethrowers with Life or Magic Guard sets is truly incredible because it can position around a lot of common checks. Really, the only Pokemon I say that will always beat this Pokemon is just Heatran, and that's really it. So, Clefable definitely is a great Pokemon. Would recommend it. I think you're actually kind of throwing up putting us on most teams. We have Love-Disc, which is trash. Now we get to Salamence. Now, Salamence, I think, definitely is in the usable range. As mentioned before today, I wanted to upload Salamence. I do think it's a good Pokemon on OU. Stuff like Specs gets the advantage over Lottie because it's able to counter Pokemon such as Scizor, which Lottie struggles to do, by using a Flamethrower or Fire Blast. Mence, obviously, also having Intimidate is pretty cool because it enables easier time with setting up with Dragon Dances, whereas Lottie struggles a bit more combo sets, albeit they're still very threatening, but at least Mence does offer the open position for itself by getting Intimidate and forcing out physical attackers. It's a bit bulkier, which is great for fighting checking. So I think Mence at least has purpose in the tier, even over stuff like Dragonite, but it's not better than those Pokemon. It just has the purpose, in my opinion. I think it's as good as Gyarados, at least. I don't think that either is really... I think it's probably actually slightly better than Gyarados, but I think they're still in the same cluster of Pokemon, in my opinion. Next up, we have Metagross. Now, Metagross is actually a Pokemon. I do think Metagross is also pretty usable. Albeit, I don't think it's as good as stuff like Skarmory and Scizor. Actually, I do think it's actually in that tier, personally. Beta Metagross is kind of a threat. Also, the fact it's really good Rock Setter, the typing is incredible. It's such a good check to stuff like Psychics, for example, because you're forcing the Shadow Ball from stuff like Zam. And even still, you're bulky enough to usually take it unless it gets a +2 off. And you still have stuff like Bullet Punch for priority. So I actually think that Metagross is a pretty incredible Pokemon right now. I'm kind of shocked it's not no you personally, but I think it's just the Scizor, like, extreme usage is why. But I still think this is actually a pretty good Pokemon in the tier. Just really good natural bulk. Scizor's biggest edge is really just the fact that it's a pivot and the fact that it has recovery. But Metagross still has passive recovery with leftovers. It does have the Rock's Edge over Scizor, so I think there's give and take there. And I think it legitimately has teams that it functions better on than Scizor. So we'll see what happens. I do think Metagross is a really good Pokemon, though. The Regis, they all suck. They all suck so much. Now we get into Latios. Now Latios, as good as it is, it's just a usable Pokemon at best, just because Latios will always outclass it definitively. But it's still, like, if it's still just functioning really well. Like, if you were to use a Latios over Latios, you're not going to get fucked by it. I just think you're intentionally throwing is all. But Latios is a tier to find it. Yet again, this is an incredible Pokemon. Albeit, I don't think it's as broken as I did at the beginning of the gen. It is still an incredible Pokemon to use nonetheless, though. Next up, we have Rochi. Rochi is, again, another incredible Pokemon. It's really just on par with Metagross, in my opinion, and I say that because of the fact that Rochi definitely kind of is forcing the Spinafrols this gen with, like, Wish U-Turn, and while it has that edge of being a bit more of a pivot and having the recovery that Metagross lacks, I think at the same time, though, Metagross has a lot more of an offensive presence that Rochi lacks this gen because of the lack of coverage, whereas at the very least with stuff like Earthquake plus Bullet Punch plus Meteor Mash, Metagross is able to actually put some offensive pressure on teams. Rochi, though, without the Elemental Punches, I don't think can do that, because it doesn't really have any way to touch steals, which is a pretty big issue, especially stuff like Scizor. Whereas if nothing else, if Scizor gets hit by a baited Metagross Earthquake, that's some pretty good damage right there. So, next up though, we have Torterra. I'll give Torterra just, like, niche, if nothing else, just, it's a good Fizz-Def ground. It's able to check stuff like, I guess, actually no, never mind, I was gonna take it back. A lot of the Pokemon I was gonna mention all have coverage for Torterra. Ninetales sucks, it's just a worse version of Twerkle, which is already a niche Pokemon. Infernape is definitely a great Pokemon. This is, again, another tier definer. It's one of the most versatile Pokemon right now in OU. It's able to maul, depending on the set, it's able to do a ton of damage to most of these Pokemon actually already in the tier. Even to stuff like Clefable, if you're running Life Orb Infernape, you can actually roll it pretty easily, especially after Rocks, if it's not like a Magic Guard set. So, already, I do give Infernape props for that. And Banded Infernape definitely mauls Clefable every single time. So, it's pretty good. Polion, I'll give him Polion a usable tier. It's pretty good offensive water. I think Agility is pretty cool on this Pokemon. It's a really weird Pokemon, though. Actually, never mind. I take it back. I think the fact it's a special water type is pretty useful. Just because the fact that if you look at a lot of these, really the only other good special water type is really just Rotom Wash. So stuff like Gator and Azu and Gyarados, even, they're all physical waters. And Polytode has a niche of being special. Also, I guess Defiant's kind of cool, but it's really more of a draft thing. Regardless, so it's still a cool rocker, which again, not a lot of water types really have. So it has some good roll compression as well with stuff like Defog. So the versatility is what keeps it there. Raptor, I'm gonna give Raptor usable. It's such a hard Pokemon to switch in, but I don't think it's that broken. Like, Raptor is really just good because of the fact that not a lot of people prep for it, in my opinion. But it's still incredible. Like, just run a Band or a Scarf set on like any sort of web team, and this will claim lives if your opponent is not a good removal. We have Venusaur next. Venusaur, again, similar to Torterra, I gotta give it niche. Just the sun aspect alone gives it something, because a lot of teams aren't really prepping for that. And if you could use stuff like Twerkle to clear the checks with stuff like Magnzone or Scizor, especially Scizor, which you can't run Weather Ball for, sadly, this gen. So that's something right there. Albeit, I do actually think that Victory Bell is a little bit better right now, but Venusaur does have the niche with the speed, and also the fact that Earthquake plus Stabs is pretty good, because it allows you a way to actually hit Heatran, so it's a give and take there. It really just depends, though, if you want your Sunsweeper to hit Heatran or Scizor. So while I'm on the note, actually, I'm going to add Victory Bell to the niche tier, because I quite literally think they're on par this gen, just because of the fact that Venusaur lacks Weather Ball. Now, Venusaur had Weather Ball, which will potentially be available with Home Transfer if you can transfer to VDSP. This Pokemon goes to trash, this Pokemon goes to usable, in my opinion. But for now, they both are niche. We have a few trash options, though, such as Barrel, All of You. Actually, I'm going to wait on Rampardos, because I kind of want to put that in niche. We have Wigglytuff, though. We have Bastiodon. I'm going to mull through all these Pokemon really quick, because they all suck ass. We have a Duplicate and Wormadam. I'll move that to the bottom really quickly. We have Vespiquen. We have Pachirisu. We have a whole slew of trash Pokemon. I love Charon, but it's trash. Okay. We have a few, like, somewhat usables. We have Roserade up next. Roserade is actually a pretty good Pokemon. I actually think Roserade is really decent. It's an offensive fairy check. I think the defensive Roserade is also pretty good. It's pretty slept on. Sleep Powder is pretty useful. Dual Spikes is pretty useful. Obviously, having Recovery is really nice for checking stuff like Rotom Wash long term. It's a pretty good Pokemon. I don't think there's any denying that. Also, the fact that defensive is really good at checking stuff like Azu is incredible, because it's probably one of the better checks to stuff like Drum Azu. Obviously, Braylon was incredible. It's fucking insane. Same as Unaware Clef. But it's definitely up there, in my opinion. We have Rampardos up next. I gotta give it niche. If I gave stuff like Ursaring a niche, I think Rampardos deserves it too. It's a pretty good Trick and Breaker. Also, I mean, Rock Polish is kind of funny on it, just if nothing else, but it's not a great set. It's just a funny set for videos. But it's kind of cool, at least. This is an offensive rock type. OU doesn't really have a lot of them. And even stuff like Gliscor is just kind of neutral. Obviously, with sheer force, you're able to hit stuff like Garchomp with Ice Beam. So it has purpose if you predict right. It's just a difficult Pokemon to pull off. We have stuff like Gastron. I'm going to put the blue Gastron because I think it's cooler. But Gastron, again, I'm going to give it niche just because it has the recovery aspect. The Swampert doesn't. But I think the rocks are more valuable right now, personally. But it's still kind of cool on stalls, if nothing else. But it's not a great play style. Ambipom, trash. Ambipom kind of sucks. We have a few more trash Pokemon. Mismagius just kind of sucks. It's just worse than Gengar. If Gengar ever for some reason got banned, though, Mismagius should have a purpose. Honchkrow, actually, no, I still think Honchkrow sucks. I'll stand by that. I think it's a terrible Pokemon. Perugly sucks. Skuntank sucks. Bronzong, here we go. Bronzong's actually a niche Pokemon. I think realistically in a tier, actually, I'm going to give it usable because of nothing else. It's just kind of outclassed by stuff like Metagross and Rochi. But it has its usage. Of course, it's a good Trick Room setter, if nothing else. Obviously, with Explosion as well, you're able to Trick Room and then pivot into a Trigger Breaker. So it has that use, I guess. But it's really just Trick Room teams. However, the typing is too good to not list it, at least in usable. Unlike something niche, this actually could still fulfill the role of Metagross and Rochi, if nothing else. But it's just going to do it worse. Chatot's pretty terrible, though I want to showcase it sometime. Spiritomb. I'll give Spiritomb actually niche. Unlike Ludicolo, I actually do think this is a Pokemon that has purpose. It's a pretty decent Zam check because you're really forcing the Shadow Ball there. And with Spinef, you're able to potentially take a hit. It's really good with Shadow Sneak, with Sucker Punch as well. Obviously, Hex Spamming is pretty useful. Pain Split is pretty cool for just breaking through teams that are a bit bulkier. It's not anything great, but I do think it has niche from the hills just off the typing alone. And the fact that really the only good fairy is Clef, besides Gardevoir. Garchomp, this should not be a surprise to anyone. This is obviously a tier definer right here. This is probably one of the best Pokemon in the tier right now, in my opinion. There's no denying that. If you do, you're just doing it to be a hipster. Broken Pokemon. Lucario. Lucario is a Pokemon that, again, in a tier of low fighting types, Lucario actually has some nice purpose on web teams, especially with the fact that it's a good fighting type. They also is phenomenal at breaking fairies. Stuff like Clefable and Gardevoir fold with Pokemon very effortlessly because of Meteor Mash and Bullet Punch. So I gotta give it decent, to be honest. This is a pretty terrifying Pokemon, low-key, and I think a lot of teams are definitely kind of unprepared for it. So we'll give Hippo next. Hippo next. I gotta give Hippo usable, to be honest. Hippo is kind of funny. And I think the fact that ever since the Hippo video, I've actually seen multiple teams using the Hippo team, which I think is awesome. Honestly, that's such a great honor, to be honest, that people are really using that team. So shout out to Bird for sending me the screenshots of it. I would have never seen it otherwise. But I'm really glad that people are using the Cursed Hippo, because I think it's really good. I think it actually is like one of the better niche Pokemon I've used in the channel, personally. It's actually, like, I would argue this is actually a good Hippo set. Like, a really good Hippo set. So, anyway, Hippo's kind of cool, though. It's a really good Fizdef wall. Curse is really good on it. Drapion kind of sucks, but we'll still see it, sadly. A bunch of shitty Pokemon right here. We have a Bombsnow. Bombsnow, I give niche just for Veil. I think it kind of has purpose as a Veil setter. That's really it. Also, typing's pretty cool for Garchomp. It's not running Fire Blast or Flamethrower or Fire Fang. Weavile. I think, personally, Weavile kind of sucks, but Weavile's typing alone and the speed puts it above at least niche. I think a Weavile without stuff like Triple Axle, though, or even just any good moves, like, is a bad Pokemon. But it's something, at least. The typing is really good, if nothing else, offensively. It's outpacing stuff like Zam, so I'll give it that. I do think it's a bad Pokemon, though, but I know it's unpopular. Magnzone. Magnzone is a great Pokemon. This is definitely in the tier of decent. Being able to trap and pressure Scizor is really good, especially when Scizor's best way to damage this thing is now Brick Break instead of Superpower, which is an immense difference in damage. If you're not running Banded, you're pretty much just not doing the damage necessary. And Magnzone is also just the typing load. It's a pretty threatening Pokemon. Electric Steel is actually really good against stuff like Bulky Waters, really good against Clef, really good against Scizor to just maul it with Specs Thunderbolt. So I gotta give it to Magnzone. It's definitely a really good gen for it, especially as a partner with stuff like Latios. I think it's incredible. Also with Modified Dragonite, it's such a good partner because you're able to clear the flying resist. We have Lickitung, trash. Dusknoir, trash. Electivire, Dying Border, trash. We have Leafeon and sadly Glaceon, though I'm still gonna use a No-You anyway, trash. Next up, though, we have Rhyperior. Rhyperior, I would give niche. It's kind of just a good trigger option, but that's really it. Tangrowth is obviously going to be a decent option, and it's here where there's literally no competition for it. It's kind of hard to not give this thing decent. It's a good physical sponge, stuff like Gator and Tangrowth, and Ozzy, if nothing else. So we'll give Tangrowth that. Togekiss, I'm gonna give Togekiss the same tier as Gardevoir, to be honest, which is the usable tier. I personally think it's actually on par with Gardevoir, with the niche of Togekiss being the fact that it has Air Slash and also Defog, but Gardevoir has, in my opinion, more versatility to it with the option for Trick Room as well. So I think they're both good options, but they're not standout. Yeah, Mega, I'll give you a Mega niche just because of the fact that, I mean, Tinted Lens just hits really hard, but in a tier with Heatran, I don't know if I could really put this above niche, just Tinted Lens is kind of cool. Gliscor. Gliscor should be obvious. This is definitely a tier definer. It's a great check to stuff like Garchomp. It's a great check to stuff like Teatar. It's a great check to stuff like Infernape. Just really, really good ground type. If you're running a defensive ground type, this is the peak, in my opinion. Besides Hippo, which is broken. Next up, we have Mammoth Swine. This is literally just scuffed Gliscor. Now, Mammoth Swine, I think, has a case for great, but I don't want to load the tier up too much. I am going to put it in decent for now, but this is definitely the best Pokemon in the tier, so I will move to the front. It could definitely go up to great, depending on how I scale the list. It really just depends on how much more decent gets filled and how I feel about it at the end. Porygon 2, Porygon Z, I think this is definitely in the usable option. On webs, this is a cool option. It really kind of needs webs, though. But I would put it as good of a Breaker's Nidoking. If you get a good Steel Killer or even like a Magnzone to trap Steels, this could end up being a terrifying Pokemon because there's not a lot of good normals just in the tier outside of Steels. It's really just stuff like Teatar, which a good fighting type also just deals with the Steels and also the Teatar. So you do have some good use with Porygon Z, in my opinion. It's just not a standout or anything. Gallade terrible. Probopass sucks, sadly. We have a couple bad Rotom forms, which kind of sucks because Rotom is kind of a cool Pokemon. But literally everything besides Wash sucks. Parasect sucks. We have Venomoth, which kind of sucks. I think it, personally, actually, no. I gotta give Venomoth. If I put you on Mega and Niche, I gotta put Venomoth in there, at least if nothing else. So it's like as good. I know I'm skipping around a bit, but bear with me. I'm just clearing through the rest of the fodder so we can have actual discussion. Dugtrio, I don't even think Arena Trap is allowed. This is a duplicate. If not, I mean, it's another Arceus. You know where they all went. We're clearing through a bunch of trash right now, though, which, bear with me while I do it. I want to clear anything that's not even discussion worthy right now, though. So we are almost done clearing through that, and then we can get into the rest of the Pokemon in the tier, which actually there are some really good Pokemon left, to be fair. Okay. So everything else left over is at least somewhat discussable. So let's start off with Frostlass. So Frostlass, I gotta give niche. Frostlass just having a cool speed tier, also just a good lead option, nothing else. Debon and Taunt are pretty useful options. The spikes are pretty cool. Ice Shard is great for dragons. pretty not bad option. Rotom Wash, I gotta give Rotom Wash great, to be honest. This is a tier definer right here as well with the pivoting on it. It's just really incredible. What I'm actually going to do just to make this quicker as well, I'm going to move the trash tier to the top for now. And then I will move it to there. I'll cut and move it to there at the end, but this will just make scrolling through for the rest of the list easier because obviously we're not putting any more Pokemon in trash. So, yeah. And then I guess while I'm here, I'll move the Arceus form up to Ubers just because we have it here. But yeah, next up is Uxie. This is definitely a niche Pokemon. Cool Trick Room ahead. Same as Crest. They're both pretty much as cool as Trick Room. I'll actually give Mesprit trash. I know I said I was done with trash, but it's just inferior to Uxie, to be honest. We have Azelf next. Azelf is actually a pretty decent option. I think it's actually a really cool lead. Also, the fact that it can run like multiple attack sets with the lead. It can just run Suicide Explosion lead. It can run stuff like just Specs. It's a pretty cool option in my opinion. It just scuffs Zam. It really is just scuffs Zam. Next up, I want to cover Alakazam on the same note, though. I think Alakazam is actually a great Pokemon right now. This is personally, I think, one of the best Pokemon in the tier, and I think it's kind of slept on. But I was talking with Joey after I came, and realistically, plot 3 attacks, so many teams just fold at the set as long as you're hitting your moves, which is the big kicker there. You need to hit your moves. But next up, though, we have Heatran. Yet again, another tier definer. Heatran's typing alone, it's a phenomenal check to Clef. It is the best check to Clef you can get. It's a great check to stuff like Lottie as well. So Heatran also just having rocks, it gets a niche over stuff like Rochi and Metagross that have rocks because it's a better fairy check, and niche over Scizor, which doesn't have rocks, so it has that usability there. It's a really cool fire type as well, great for steals because unlike other steals besides Magnzone, they don't really pressure steals that well. I guess Metagross is too with Earthquake, to be fair, but it's really just like Metagross, Magnzone, and Heatran for the only steals that really pressure other steals. So Magnzone, in my opinion, Heatran, in my opinion, is just an incredible Pokemon, definitely really broken. Manaphy, I also think is definitely in the great tier. Again, another tier definer, one of the best special sweepers in my opinion. It's definitely a top 5 Pokemon in this tier in my opinion. Really obnoxious water type, cannot be anything lower. Arcanine, I think Arcanine is definitely niche. Intimidate fire type alone is pretty good. It's stuff like Scizor is really, really hard checked by this Pokemon. It's also good for steals that aren't named Heatran, so I gotta give it that. Also Empoleon, I guess, but it's something. Poliwrath, I've actually seen a few Poliwrath teams popping up, as well as the team that I obviously used the other day. I think it's a pretty okay option, albeit Bandit Mammo still fucks this thing up, but if you catch it on the Ice Lock-in, it could actually do some work with stuff like Circle Throw, so I guess it's okay. I don't think it's great, though. Machamp, cool Trick Room fighting type, if nothing else. Really, really good breaker with Guts. It's slower than all the other Guts users, so I'll give that, besides like Hariyama. But I think the issue with Hariyama, though, is just the fact that it just has worse moves, though. Though I guess having knockoff is kind of cool. But I still think that No Guard as well, just being able to fake that in Trick Room is pretty useful. Zard, I'm going to put this in the trash tier. I just thought it was unlike the other Pokemon. It wasn't a blatantly obvious one. But it's just worse Moltres right now. It's just a combination of Moltres and Typhlosion, but just worse at both roles. Because it doesn't have stuff like Eruption that Typhlosion has, and it doesn't have the defensive utility that Moltres has with Flame Body. I have Tentacruel up next. I think Tentacruel is just a niche option. It's a cool spinner with T-Spikes. Just good roll compression there, nothing else. Slowbro, I'm going to put Slowbro in the same tier I put Slowking in, which is niche. No Teleport kind of sucks for it, but it's a good fighting sponge if nothing else. But again, no Teleport really sucks for it. Cloyster. Cloyster's actually a pretty usable Pokemon. I think a Shell Smash is actually pretty good this gen, as well as the fact that it's a good spinner. It's a good defensive option. I believe this is actually on the Hippo team if I remember correctly, but it's a pretty good spinner. It's just a pretty good utility mon. Gengar, I'm going to put in decent. I think it just scuffed Sam, scuffed Lottie. I will say, though, the edge that Gengar does have over some of those Pokemon is just the fact that it is a really good fairy counter. And just the fact it's able to maul Clefable very effortlessly. But I think it's a bit more susceptible to a lot of stuff like the top tier Psychics have an issue with. Though, at the same time, though, Scarf Gengar is able to deal with a lot of those. And especially since the fact we're not seeing a lot of Scarf Lottie, Scarf Sam, etc. That it does have that niche. It's definitely, again, one of the better options in this tier. Like, I think that these 4 right here are definitely the best decents. But I do think at the same time, though, that they do all belong below great. Next we have Blastoise. Blastoise, again, just niche. It's just a worse Cloyster, in my opinion. Because if nothing else, Cloyster at least is the Ice typing too. Just for a more immediate access to Stab, which is really cool. Also the fact that Blastoise just... I don't think Blastoise is good this gen. I think Cloyster just does everything better. Finally, though, I do want to go over Shaymin and where I think Shaymin will place. Now, as I said a few times, actually, when I discussed Celebi, I think Shaymin is just a better version of Celebi. It's a really good grass type, and I think the fact that it's less passive than Tangrowth, just through the options alone, it's also better, especially bulky. This does actually have some pretty good use in the tier. And it's also a lot easier to hit Braylon, albeit to be fair, Tango has Aerial Ace. But the fact that you're able to run Dazzling Gleam is really useful for not only Braylon, but also top tier dragons. It has a better speed stat. Obviously, Leech Seed is pretty cool. So like Leech, Synth, Seed Flare, and Dazzling Gleam is actually stuff that I'll be running later in the week. Spoiler alert, we are doing Unreleased Mon's game later in the week. Check that out when it drops. But I do think this actually has a lot of use in that regard. Also, again, just the fact that it has just Natural Cure allows it to avoid status. So I do think it has at least competition for Tango personally. I'm kind of interested to see how it ends up falling, though. I don't know if it will stay OU, because I know a lot of teams really like the regen course, but without Teleport, maybe it won't end up being as much of a competition. So we'll have to see what happens. With that said, though, this is the OU viability tier list. As I said, though, we're going to drop the trash tier to where it belongs, being at the absolute lowest peak on the tier list. So now, obviously, I will link to the finished tier list at the end of the video. We have the screenshot right here of everything. I'll link to an imgur of it if you want to check it out in full down below. Let me know your guys' thoughts. If you agree and disagree, I would love to hear it in the comments. If you enjoy, leave a like below and subscribe for more content just like this. I will see you guys in tomorrow's video, which will hopefully be the Salaman's Wi-Fi. If not, a Salaman Showdown live. I'm going to record it either way, so we'll see what happens to that. Until then, though, peace out, guys.